I'm Daniel Reeves, and I grew up believing my mother would protect me from anything, but I was wrong. The real horror began when I discovered she wasn't protecting me from the world, she was protecting the world from me. I always believed my mother loved me more than anything. From the time I was small, she never let me out of her sight, always reminding me that the world outside was dangerous. At night, she would tuck me into bed, smoothing my hair back with cold fingers, whispering that she would always protect me. Her words felt like a comfort when I was younger, but as I grew older, they began to sound more like a warning. The way she lingered in my room at night changed from soothing to unsettling. It started gradually. At first I thought I was dreaming when I opened my eyes in the darkness and saw her standing in the corner. She didn't move, didn't speak, only stood there watching. I told myself it was just the tricks of shadows or the blur of half-sleep, but the nights kept repeating, and each time, she was there. When morning came and I gathered the courage to ask, she always denied it, her voice calm and steady as though she couldn't even imagine such a thing. Her denial made me feel foolish, but deep inside, I knew what I saw. Her eyes were the next thing I noticed. When I was small, they had always been warm, full of life, always soft when they landed on me. But now they seemed hollow, like the warmth had been drained away. Sometimes, in the light of day, she would look at me and I would feel something sharp in that gaze, something that didn't feel like love. It was like being studied, measured, the way a hunter might look at prey before striking. I could never hold her stare for long. She grew more protective too, in ways that didn't feel normal anymore. She locked every door and window, always checking them twice, keeping me inside as if the world was a trap waiting to swallow me whole. Whenever I reached for the front door, even just to step into the yard, her hand would clamp down on my arm with a strength that felt unnatural. Her grip left my skin aching, and she always told me it was for my safety. But the more she locked me away, the more I felt that what I truly needed protection from was her. The strangest moments were at night. I would pretend to sleep sometimes, just to see what she would do. Hours after she had said goodnight, I would feel her presence again, her shadow falling across me as she stood beside the bed. My heart would pound so loudly I thought it would give me away, but I never moved, never dared to open my eyes fully. Her breathing was different in those hours, heavier, slower, as if she was savoring each second. And then there was her touch. One night, when I lay still beneath the blanket, her hand brushed against my cheek. The touch wasn't gentle, it was cold, deliberate, like the hand of a stranger. I bit my tongue to stop myself from gasping. She lingered there too long, her fingers tracing the shape of my face as if committing it to memory. The air felt heavy, thick, and I could barely breathe. Then she leaned closer. I could feel her breath against my ear, warm but somehow wrong, carrying a smell of earth and iron. My body screamed to run, but I was trapped beneath her presence, too terrified to move. And that was when I heard it, her whisper soft, almost tender, but filled with something that froze my blood. "You're almost ready." I stayed perfectly still, even as her breath pulled away, even as the weight of her presence lifted. I didn't dare open my eyes again until morning. When the sun finally rose and light filled the room, she was gone. She acted as if nothing had happened, humming to herself in the kitchen, moving around the house like any ordinary day. But I couldn't forget her words. Almost ready for what? The morning after that whisper, I felt like I was carrying a secret I could never speak aloud. My mother moved through the house as if nothing had happened, her voice soft, her movements calm. She hummed while she cooked breakfast, just like she always did. Her back turned to me as I sat at the table, but I could not shake the memory of her words. "You're almost ready." Almost ready for what? The thought looped in my mind endlessly, and the more I tried to push it away, the louder it seemed to grow. I studied her more closely after that day. Everything about her seemed slightly off, little cracks I had never noticed before. When we sat at the table, I realized she barely ate anything. She would cut the food into tiny pieces, moving it around her plate with her fork, but never bringing it to her lips. When she did take a bite, I never actually saw her swallow. She just chewed slowly, watching me with those hollow eyes, as if the act of eating was nothing more than a performance she no longer cared to finish. Her strength startled me too. One afternoon I went to open the window in my room to let in a breeze, but before I could slide it up, her hand was on my shoulder. The grip was so hard it sent a sting up my arm. She pulled me back with such force that I stumbled into the dresser. I tried not to cry out, not to show her how much it hurt, but when I glanced down, there was already a red mark on my skin, deep enough to bruise. She only told me it was dangerous to have the window open, that bad things could come inside. Then she locked it again, twisting the latch twice before walking away. My arm throbbed, but the memory of her grip throbbed even more. It was around that time that the sounds began. At first I thought I was imagining them, but the more I listened, the clearer they became. Every night, somewhere in the house, I would hear her moving. The floorboards creaked under her weight, her steps slow and deliberate, as though she were pacing with no destination. Sometimes she would whisper two words in a language I couldn't recognize, harsh and jagged, curling through the silence like smoke. I pressed the blanket over my head, but her voice seemed to seep through the fabric, finding its way into my ears. Curiosity started to eat away at me. I wanted to know what she was doing when she thought I was asleep. One afternoon, while she was outside tending to the garden, I crept into her room. It smelled strange inside, a mixture of damp earth and something metallic that stung the back of my throat. Her closet was the worst. I opened it slowly, praying the hinges wouldn't squeal. The smell hit me immediately, thick and rotten, almost sweet in its decay. I pulled back a few folded blankets from the top shelf, and my heart nearly stopped. Photographs, dozens of them, some faded and yellow, others more recent. But they weren't of me and her together. They were of children I didn't recognize. Their faces were all scratched out, long gouges dug into the surface as if by a knife. In some of the photos, only their eyes were destroyed, leaving hollow sockets staring blankly at me. I dropped the pictures back onto the shelf, my hand shaking so badly I could barely push the closet shut again. When I heard the back door slam, I raced out of her room and into mine, trying to steady my breathing. My heart pounded in my chest as I sat on the bed, replaying what I had just seen. Who were those children? Why did she keep their pictures? And why were they destroyed? That night, I stayed awake long after she had gone to bed. At exactly 3 in the morning, I heard something heavy dragging across the floor above my room. A dull scrape, like a chair being pulled, only slower, rougher, as though claws were digging into the wood. My chest tightened, every hair on my body rising. I stared at the ceiling, unable to move. The sound went on for what felt like forever before finally stopping. The silence that followed was worse than the noise. I thought it was over, until I heard something else, faint, muffled, hidden within the walls. It was soft, almost too soft to notice at first, but once I focused, I could hear it clearly. A child crying. I tried convincing myself the crying was only a dream, some leftover fear tangled in my mind after the noises above my room. But the next night it returned, just as faint, just as muffled, as if it were coming from behind the walls themselves. I pressed my ear to the plaster, and I swear I felt a faint vibration, like the sound was traveling through hollow spaces. The more I listened, the more certain I became that it wasn't my imagination. There was something in the walls. The crying followed me for days, soft enough to ignore if I distracted myself, but never truly gone. Sometimes it sounded like a baby, other times like a child slightly older, but always desperate, always trapped. My mother never acknowledged it. She moved about the house as if nothing unusual was happening, but I noticed how quiet she became whenever I lingered in the hallways too long, or when I pressed too close to the walls. Her eyes would flick toward me with a sharpness that sent me scurrying back to my room. One evening, my curiosity pushed me too far. I waited until she went down to the cellar carrying a candle. I followed as quietly as I could, every step heavy with dread. The cellar was always cold, the kind of damp chill that clung to your skin and crept into your lungs. Shadows stretched across the stone walls, and the smell of earth was stronger here than anywhere else in the house. I hid behind a tall, rotting shelf stacked with jars of preserves no one ever ate. From there, I watched her move to the far wall. She knelt slowly, pressing her ear against the bricks as though listening to someone on the other side. Her lips moved in a whisper too faint for me to hear, but her face was tilted upward in an expression that made my stomach twist, something between hunger and devotion. She stayed like that for a long time, the flame from the candle flickering against her pale skin. Then, almost lovingly, she whispered one word I did hear. Soon. The sound of it rattled in my skull. Soon for me. For the crying behind the walls. I didn't wait to find out. I slipped back upstairs before she turned around, my legs trembling so badly I thought they might give out. My mind spun with questions, but none of them mattered as much as one. What was behind that wall? That night, when the house grew silent, I crept back to the cellar on my own. I brought no light, afraid of drawing her attention, so I stumbled through the dark until I reached the same wall. My fingers traced along the mortar until I felt its small cracks, loose stone. I picked at it slowly, breaking away bits of grit until a section crumbled in my hand. The smell that seeped through the hole was foul, damp and rotten, the scent of something hidden too long. I leaned closer, squinting into the darkness, and that was when I saw it. A pale, tiny hand slipped through the opening. The fingers were thin, grayish, the nails chipped and dirty. They twitched once before vanishing back into the darkness as quickly as they had appeared. I stumbled backward, my breath caught in my throat, my body shaking so hard I thought I would fall. I clutched my chest, trying not to scream because I knew she might still be awake. Listening, I fled upstairs and shut myself in my room, but even then I couldn't breathe properly. My skin crawled at the memory of that hand. I tried to tell myself it wasn't real, that I had imagined it, that fear had created a vision where nothing existed. But when I finally dared to open my door again, I found something waiting. Muddy footprints led from the hallway into my room. They were small, the size of a child's, trailing across the floorboards to the side of my bed. They stopped there, right where I slept. Sleep abandoned me completely after I saw the footprints. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined that small pale hand reaching from the wall again. Imagined those muddy steps creeping closer while I lay helpless beneath the blankets. My body ached with exhaustion, but the fear of what I might see when I opened my eyes kept me awake. It felt like the house itself was watching me, listening for any weakness, waiting for me to give in. My mother seemed to notice my weariness. Though she said nothing, she only watched me. At the table, her fork resting untouched on her plate, her eyes followed every movement I made. I could feel her gaze on me even when I tried to keep my own fixed on the food. When I dared to look up, I saw no love in her eyes anymore. Instead, there was a strange calculation, like she was measuring me, judging whether or not I was ready for something I couldn't name. I stopped eating what she gave me. Each plate felt like a trap. The smell of the food turned my stomach, and though I pretended to take small bites, I never swallowed. The hunger gnawed at me, but fear gnawed deeper. I couldn't trust her, not after what I had seen, not after what I had heard whispering through the walls. My body grew weaker, but my mind sharpened in that weakness. I began to see things more clearly. This was not a home meant to protect me. It was a place meant to prepare me for something terrible. The house itself seemed to twist around me in those days. Shadows lingered too long in the corners, shapes forming that looked almost human before dissolving back into the dark. The sound of crying behind the walls grew louder, sometimes shifting into laughter so faint it barely carried. When I pressed my ear against the plaster, I swore I could hear whispers echoing back, too faint to understand, but directed at me. They seemed to grow louder at night, as though they knew I was listening. It was then I began to notice her reflection. My mother moved through the house like she always had, but the mirrors told a different story. One evening I passed the tall mirror in the hallway, and I froze. She stood in front of it, staring at herself with a stillness that felt wrong. But her reflection wasn't right, it wasn't her. The face in the mirror was mine. My own features stared back, but distorted, twisted, as though drained of life. My eyes looked sunken, my skin pale and stretched tight, and a smile that did not belong to me curved across the reflection's lips. She tilted her head slightly, and in that same instant, the reflection moved differently than she did. My chest tightened, my body turning to ice. She hadn't noticed me yet. I stumbled back as quietly as I could, trying not to let the boards creak beneath my feet, but the mirror caught me. For just a second, the twisted version of myself inside it locked eyes with me and smiled wider, its teeth sharp and too many. That night I tried to lock my bedroom door, but the key was gone. I searched every corner of the room, every drawer, every crack in the floorboards, but it had simply vanished. My hand shook as I pushed a chair against the door, though I knew it would never hold her out if she truly wanted to come in. The air in the room felt heavy, suffocating, as though the house itself wanted me trapped. I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, until the silence pressed too hard on my ears. Then came the sound, soft at first, then clearer, a faint scratching like nails dragging across wood, coming from beneath my bed. My chest locked tight, and I couldn't move. The scratching went on, slow and deliberate, until I thought I would break from the sound alone. When it finally stopped, the silence felt worse. I let out the breath I hadn't realized I was holding, thinking it was over. But then I felt it, the gentle weight of something shifting at the end of the mattress, dipping it down as though someone had just climbed onto the bed with me. I lay frozen beneath the blankets, too afraid to move, too afraid even to breathe. The weight at the end of the mattress pressed down steadily, as if someone small but solid had settled there. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat echoing in my ears, drowning out everything else. I wanted to tell myself it was only my imagination, the exhaustion tricking me, but the mattress dipped deeper as the weight shifted closer. I kept my eyes shut, praying it would stop. But then, from somewhere near my feet I felt the faintest brush, tiny fingers creeping against my leg through the blanket. The touch was cold, damp, like the hand that had reached through the wall in the cellar. I pulled my legs up instinctively, curling into myself, but the touch followed, sliding slowly up my calf until I thought I would scream. Before I could, the weight lifted. The mattress rose as if whatever had been there slipped away. The silence that followed was unbearable, stretching into long minutes where I didn't dare move. Then, a new sensation, the feeling of someone leaning over me, their presence heavy, their breath hot against my face. I opened my eyes, and she was there, my mother. Her face was inches from mine, her eyes wide and unblinking, her mouth curled into a smile that didn't belong to her. In the dim light, her skin looked wrong, cracked in places, peeling at the edges, revealing something dark pulsing beneath. Her lips moved, and though I wanted to cover my ears, I couldn't. Her whisper was soft, almost tender, but filled with a hunger that made my stomach twist. "You're ready now." I tried to scream, but no sound left my throat. Her hand pressed against my chest, and immediately I felt it. Something inside me shifted, as though she was reaching deeper than skin and bone, clawing into the very core of me. My limbs grew heavy, numb, and my vision blurred. I couldn't fight, couldn't move. My body was a shell, and she was pulling something vital out of it. Darkness swirled at the edges of my sight, but just before it consumed me, I saw movement in the corner of the room. A small figure stood there, pale and frail, its face shadowed, but its outline clear, the same child I had glimpsed behind the wall. It reached one hand toward me, pointing with a trembling finger. Its mouth opened wide as if to cry out. But no sound came, only silence, unbearable and suffocating. Then everything went black. When I woke, the room was still. The weight on my chest was gone, and my mother was nowhere to be seen. For a moment I thought it had all been a nightmare, but the air felt thick, heavy, like something unseen lingered. I pushed myself up slowly, my body weak, my skin clammy. The house was silent, too silent, as though it were holding its breath. I stumbled toward the mirror by my bed, hoping to see my face, to reassure myself that I was still me. But when I looked, I froze. The reflection wasn't mine. My mother's face stared back at me, her hollow eyes shining, her lips curved into that same terrible smile. I touched my cheek, but in the mirror her hand lifted, not mine. I stumbled back, knocking over the chair I had pushed against the door. My heart raced so violently I thought it might burst. I blinked, and for a moment, the reflection shifted back to me, pale and weak, eyes sunken, skin gray. But when I leaned closer, I saw her again behind my eyes, waiting, watching. The walls groaned, a low sound like something alive pressing against them. From somewhere deep within, the crying started again, louder than ever before, joined by more voices, dozens of them. They rose together in a chorus of grief, echoing through the halls, until it felt like the entire house was mourning. I don't know if she took something from me that night, or if she left something inside, but I know I'm not the same. Every time I look in the mirror I see her waiting. Every time the house grows quiet, I hear the children crying, and when I close my eyes I feel her breath against my ear, whispering again and again, "You were always mine."